That right now.
With Michigan, another one of the big schools in your recruitment, how are things going between you and the Wolverines at this point?
Things are going great. We're having talks to set up the official visit, so that date should be coming out sooner or later too. So that's really it. Talks have been going really well. Just seeing how they're gonna do the season.
Good Friday to you, and welcome in Michigan Football Today. I'm Dennis Fithian, and we are ready to go. We're talking about the latest in Michigan sports. We're live weekdays at 1 o'clock. Today, we're trying out Twitter Spaces for the first time, so if you're right there, I see there's a listener there wearing his it's cool. Is there for a hot second. Anyway, so I said, what's going on? What's going on to everybody out there? We are, we're close. We're close. 15 days, I think, till we're talking about games. Next week, week 0, we have some games in football. Heck, you know how it is. I took in 5 minutes of 2 teams that are really going to stank in the NFL next year. I watched little Bears and Seahawks on ESPN last night. So, yeah, I mean, you get the itch and you're scratching it a little bit. It's good that the preseason. I hate the preseason. I deal with the preseason. I used to not mind the preseason, but I've grown to hate it. And you get where that the week 4 game where they don't play anybody. That game really irritates you. And then, but finally, it gets over. And then it's like, oh, my God, what have I done for a month watching these exhibition games? But college football, we are ready to go week 0 next week, which is exciting. We're going to dive right into it. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, Michigan adding that 5-star, got some more details on the rush and linebacker that the Wolverines just added this week. And we'll give you some more thoughts on that. I've got some practice news. We'll talk about practice. That's coming up. I will also, in something I've done all summer long, I have been going over my top 10 TV series of all time. I've updated it. I am all the way up to number 3, so we will run through that. But we're going to start with Michigan and Michigan State. Thinking about how U of M is going to deal with MSU this year. I have the question for you, and if you want to respond, you can by putting a message up on YouTube or wherever else you're watching. I ask you how you think Michigan and the Michigan State game is going to play out this year. How do you think the Wolverines are going to do against the Spartans this season? And that's where we'll start right here. And I have to tell you, the last 2 years, I feel like I usually have a pretty good read on the game. I think I have a better read than most because I don't, it's emotional like everybody, but the part about the exchanging barbs online or wherever, like, just people are just all about, insulting each other, Michigan State, whatever they can. There's no insult that is, too harsh for MSU, and the other way around works as well. And I think that clouds people's judgment when it comes down to the game. And it's not saying that I don't stoop down there and run into some of that myself at times, but, I just don't think I do it as much as others, which I think gives me a little bit of advantage on being able to get a good read on the game. However, I say all that, in the last 2 years, I have been completely wrong about the outcome of the game 2 years ago on Halloween night during the pandemic, that it was great to just have football out there. And I can recall, Michigan State Mel Tucker comes in. He didn't know, he only knew the players by Zoom in the offseason. Half the team was transfers or true freshmen. Nobody thought they were going to win a game. If they were going to win a game, it was going to be their first game. And it was going to be against Rutgers. And Michigan State played one of the worst games that I've ever seen against Rutgers. How many times did they turn it over? 6 times in that game. They just looked so terrible. I thought Michigan, who looked really good the pandemic year, the opener, against Minnesota, that night game up in Minneapolis. Wolverines looked great in that game. I thought Michigan, being at home didn't matter. In fact, it worked against them in the pandemic season in an empty big house. But I thought Michigan was going to win that game 50-0. It was something crazy. And we know what happened. And then considering that everything that Jim Harbaugh had gone through and then heading into last year, I had circled the Michigan State game as a must-win game. And those are funny things to say because sometimes you say it early in the season like this is a must-win game, and it's not really. But I thought that last year was definitely a must-win game for Michigan against Michigan State. And then in the final analysis, it was not a must-win game. Michigan did not have to beat Michigan State. They did not beat Michigan State. And as you know, they beat Ohio State, and they still won the Big Ten, and they had a chance to play for the national championship, and they did not beat Michigan State. So it wasn't a must-win. That's why this year I've been, talking about Michigan State, at different times in the offseason, and we're talking about it today. I feel like it's a must-win for Michigan, but how can I say that? Because last year wasn't, and if last year proved anything that if you're going to talk about this game, it would be. It's really important. It's really nice. Michigan do they probably have to win the game if they want to go into that last game with the division title on the line? I think yes, to all of those things, but because it was last year and it just happened where it wasn't a must-win, even though I thought it was, I'm just not going to call it that, and you might. Now, if I've learned one thing about Mel Tucker is that he can throw together a football team and he can get them competitive, whatever his organizational skills are, or being able to pull a team together with transfers and however you want to put it, he can field a very competent football team like that. And he has done that against Michigan. So when you have a coach that's come in and he's 2-0, I don't really have anything negative to say about Mel Tucker. He got paid, no doubt about it. A big part of it was the success that he had against Michigan. Meanwhile, if I'm looking at this game, and I'm going to be honest about it, there's a big reason, and it's not the biggest reason, but it's a big reason here in the offseason, and it's a change for Michigan and from what I have seen mostly, throughout my life. And that is that Jim Harbaugh in Indianapolis, if you don't recall how it went, I'll put it up on the screen. Jim Harbaugh, when he was in Indianapolis, he was asked about Michigan's goals for this year. And he came out and he said, beat Ohio State. Okay, that's good. That was good that he said that. And he said, beat Michigan State. And he went on to say, win the Big Ten and then win the national championship. All very lofty goals. But in the past, it would not have been a surprise at all, and I would have predicted that Jim Harbaugh would have gone up there and said, we want to beat our rivals, or, we want to win the last game of the year, or we do want to beat Ohio State. He could mention Ohio State. And then he would say, win the Big Ten and win the national championship, and he wouldn't say anything about Michigan State. He just would leave him out. Would not address him directly, and the fans would love it, and they would just get a big kick out of the head coach at Michigan not recognizing Michigan State, even though, like this year, he had a losing record. He could have done it this year and people would have been just fine with it. They'd have been laughing, belly aching about it. And then all the Michigan State fans would be like, hey, you actually won last year. Oh yeah, we actually won the last 2 years. And oh yeah, we actually have a winning record against Jim Harbaugh. So it's just a change. It's a change in the approach for Michigan, and it's a good change. If you're just a Michigan fan and you don't think it has any factor, you didn't think it factored in with Michigan State, it factored in. D'Antonio, D'Antonio was really good at being able to find low-star recruits and turning them into starters and first and second round draft picks and turning water into wine. But he used the rivalry hatred and the disrespect that Michigan showed Michigan State, and it burned those guys, hot. They were hot all off season and all during the season. And, Michigan just would feed that fire by acting like, whatever, like, sure, we've lost. We'll win this year. and it worked against them. So it's a change this year. Michigan, changed up their approach, and I think that's good. Now, is it the only thing? No, but it's a factor. I noticed it, and I'm glad that they did do that. Now, you can't tell the fans to, take it seriously and, not engage in all the ridiculous stuff that fans do, but that should not matter. Certainly shouldn't matter as much as what the coaches and players feel about it. So they're taking it seriously. And so for that, I am encouraged about Michigan being able to end this 2-game losing streak. The game is at home. And, Michigan State, as much success as they had last year, the surprising thing, and you may have not realized this, but when you look at Michigan State's defense last year, it was terrible. They ranked last in the Big Ten in total defense, and yet they still won 11 games. And they get 6 starters back from that defense, and the pass defense was, the worst. And so, how do you win 11 games when you have the worst defense in the conference? Well, there it is. You have a pretty good offense, and they had Kenneth Walker, and they've got 2 backs that they'll try to fill in there, and the offensive line's a big question mark, but they've got more question marks. So, if we just take Michigan. For example, Michigan's got question marks on defense, and State can play the same game as Michigan State's got a lot of questions on defense too, but they also have a lot of questions on offense. And for Michigan, they don't have as many questions on offense as they do on defense. So Michigan's got a better team, the way I look at it, and they are also playing the game at home, and they have the intangible factor that usually Michigan State has because of disrespect and everything. And I think that adds up to Michigan being able to strike back and will enable them to get the victory on the 29th of October this year. That is how I see it. So I'm going to look at what some of the people are saying via the messages as I ask you the question on how you see the game playing out this year. Antoine is first up in the queue. He thinks Michigan will win against Michigan State. They should have won last year. And Antoine's prediction is a 17-point win. It's funny you say they should have won last year. And I agree. I watched for the first time. Did I rewatch it initially? I must have at least gone through a little bit of it. But for the first time since, the October, I watched the majority of the game yesterday. And I got to tell you, I watched it right up until Sandra still got a touchdown to give Michigan a 16-point lead in the third quarter. And Michigan looked great. I mean, they really did. They looked fabulous. And there were a few calls, like one, Kenneth Walker was going in for a touchdown and the ball was just coming out. Like it was so close. Like you thought, wow, the replay, that would have been a terrible play for MSU if that would have been overturned. It wasn't, and I thought that was the right call. But then towards the end of the half, the play that we can all remember, a Jabo stripping Peyton Thorne, and then Aiden Hutchinson pouncing on the ball in the end zone, that should have been a touchdown. And then just to go back to it for a second, I'm watching it, and you got Mike Pereira. They go to him, and Mike Pereira's like, yeah, everything that I'm looking at here, and that they're going to piece it all together, but from all the views that we have, it really looks like he's talking about the shin, and he says, no, they're not going to be able to overturn this one. He keeps emphasizing, the call on the field was a strip and a fumble. And Joel Klatt even takes it further. Like Joel Klatt is like, I might reverse it if they called him down by the video evidence that I'm looking at. He's showing the ball. He really looks like it's coming loose. And, if you're talking about an ankle, and really, if you're being, and it's hard to be honest about replays, I've found over the years, but I'm going to be really honest about it. Wherever the shin starts from the ankle, can you make a case that 10% or 15% of Thorne's shin is down as the ball is coming out? Maybe. That's what they did. And so maybe they're sitting up there saying, well, 10% is technically part of the shin. Or were they sitting out there saying, you know what, this is a rivalry game. We don't want Michigan to, blow them out. It'll be great for ratings. I don't know if that entered in. They're sitting there in Spartan Stadium, and so, or they're not in Spartan Stadium, where they're at in the Big Ten in New York or whatever else. Like, let's just make this even. Let's see what we can do here. Michigan's already doing a great job. I don't know what went into it, but when Klatt and Gus Johnson and Mike Pereira, and then everybody else is watching, like, oh, this one's going to hold up. And then you see him over there writing in that notebook, like, damn. But Michigan was still able to come down and get a Moody field goal there at the end of the half. I'll give you some takeaways. I'll watch the bitter. It's not the total bitter end, but when Michigan was up 16 points in the second half, like that was the high point of the Wolverines' day. And this will get to some of the practice notes. It's a little bit of a teaser for you, but Andrel Anthony, we've been talking about Andrel Anthony, the sophomore wide receiver from East Lansing, quite a bit this offseason. And Andrel Anthony's first catch of his college career happened last year in the first quarter against Michigan State. He just does a little crossing route, and Cade McNamara throws the perfect pass. I mean, just laces it in there. It doesn't matter who you're talking about in the NFL ever. They would all say, what a great throw. I mean, right on the money. And Anthony catches it right down the sideline, touchdown. The pride of East Lansing coming back home. You couldn't draw it up any better, but he wasn't done. You think about just the 93-yard touchdown that Andrel Anthony had. J.J. McCarthy comes in that game, and in the second quarter, he throws a touchdown, and it's Andrel Anthony, and he goes up and high points the ball. The coverage was pretty good, actually, by whoever the state DB was, but you get like a split leg on the move, J.J. McCarthy. What a throw from the true freshman to the other true freshman who just goes up and, just makes a play. You couldn't do anything about it. And spectacular from Andrel Anthony. And the thing that I forgot until I watched the game again last night, you get into the second half. So Andrel Anthony has the 2 touchdowns. He damn near has a third touchdown. McNamara lays one right out there, and he's got him. And it goes off. He probably should have had it. It would have been a great catch. But it goes off of his fingertips in the end zone, right in front of the goalpost there. He'd have had a hat trick in his first game. So that's how good Andrel Anthony did, and that's how he arrived last year. That was an incredible performance. Now, again, I don't have that bitter taste or the Spartan comeback and then obviously victory by MSU. I stopped watching it. That's just the way things went. Like the Seahawks and Bears. I wanted to watch the first couple series there. I guess I could have recorded it, but I thought, this is a good spot to leave. Ricky thinks Michigan gets it done by a baker's dozen this year. Logan on the feedback, and it's good to see everybody here on Twitter Spaces. It's my first time out. Anybody wants to say anything, get on this show. It's just me. And so I'm not 100% sure how to pop you up and get their audio there, but I think you have to raise your hand or something. But if somebody that is listening on Twitter Spaces wants to do that, I'll put you on. Logan on the feedback says he just found out yesterday that he got tickets for the Michigan home game against Illinois this season. He's lived in Tennessee since he was 5, and he's never been to the Big House. Oh, Logan, you are in for a treat. That is Michigan's final home game of the season. As things go, the football game is the attraction. I think you probably know that. But the surroundings on a game day at Michigan, I didn't say this when about a month or two ago, the big lottery was out where you could win $1 billion. And I think somebody from Illinois got the winning ticket at a gas station. But I was going to say, if I won the lottery and I was a billionaire, there is still no place in the world that I would rather be on fall Saturdays than a Michigan home game, all the way from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. It's just everything that you could possibly want. It's perfect. And then, the game is the centerpiece. But sometimes, and it's good that we're talking about Michigan State today, because there've been 2 tailgates that I've been up. One time I had an RV and I was up there the night before. But the tailgates at Michigan State are just like Michigan. There's nothing better. I mean, it is. And as much as you hear people insulting each other and calling people every single name, and people getting riled up with all the hatred between Michigan and Michigan State, and then you'll go out there on a Saturday, wherever you're at, East Lansing or in Ann Arbor, and you will look, and you'll never see more mingling with the enemy, co-mingling. Like, you'll look over at the tailgate, and it'll be half green and white, half maize and blue. They'll be standing next to each other. It's really a treat to see. But the great part about going to the last home game is that most of the tailgaters will pull out all stops on the last home game when it comes to their menus on the tailgate. So you got that going for you, which is great, Logan, when it comes down to it. And then if you're if you're smart, if you're smart, you get there real early, and then you don't try to get out of there. A lot of the frustration will come if you're going to a football game. It's the same thing up in East Lansing. That you will, and I know some people are like, hey, we actually, have kids and a babysitter and, trying to get home at a reasonable hour. I get all that. I understand all that. But I'm setting all that aside. So what? If you plan on, getting down there at 8:00 in the morning, got to watch your drink intake if you're somebody that's, going to have some alcohol, because, taking on 2-3 beers before noon is a little bit different than, drinking 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But, you're smart enough to know that. But stay afterwards. There's plenty of TVs, and the tailgating is just getting going. You can get out there and you can stay for 12. You can be back at your tailgate at 4:00. Tailgate for 3 hours, 4 hours after the game. And then you just get in the car, and then you're driving home, and there's no traffic. You're all set. And then there's no problem. And Michigan will beat Illinois. I'll guarantee that here in late August. Brent Bielema's somebody that I follow his career. My dad lived in Arkansas. And so when Bielema went from Wisconsin to Arkansas, the family down there all wanted to know about Brett Bielema. You found out that down in Arkansas, they all like to talk. I didn't know how much Arkansas fans love to gossip. They love talking about how Brett Bielema landed his wife, who is 16 years his he's 16 years her senior. Is that how to say it? She's 16 years older. But I think she was a cheerleader when he was the coach or something like that. So it was kind of scandalous. People like talking about it. And if you try to find out him getting a quote from how the two met or something, it's like you can't find it. It's all scrubbed, all the history there. And then Bielema put on, 50 pounds when he was down at Little Rock as the head coach of Arkansas. And all the Hog fans will say, you get great barbecue, but it's the fried chicken in Little Rock that is just the spice that they use. It's just addicting. It's hard not to gain weight. If you're a northerner and you go down to Arkansas, it's tough not to gain weight because of the fried chicken and barbecue down there. I don't know. That's what Arkansas fans, that was mostly what they were preoccupied when it came to Brent Bielema. So, Logan, we'll have to make sure that you have a great time when you're up here. Adrian is looking at a double-digit win. Here's that disrespect we're talking about. Antoine throwing it out there. He's coming up with he's throwing a little bit of an insult out there. Logan saying Michigan will dominate all 3 phases of the game and win by 3+ scores. Okay, we got predictions. I asked you how you feel about the game, Michigan and Michigan State this year. Lloyd says Michigan State and Mel Tucker are going down in Ann Arbor. Mel Tucker is going into the dumpster with a raccoon, a rat, and Halloween in 2022. Well, considering I remember pandemic 2020 Halloween and how that went down, turnabout's fair play around Halloween then, if that's ends up how it's going to go. Lloyd, let's see. Adrian giving an exact score, 45-17. That sounds pretty good to me. Post-game win expectancy, 80% for Michigan. That's the captain saying. Mark, not so lopsided. Or is it? Let's see. He says, this is Mark on the feedback. I think it's close at the half, and then the Maize and Blue take control late in the third, 37-17. All right, 20-point win. Yeah, that's lopsided. 20-point win's lopsided. That's it. There's some insults. You know, we knew these were going to come around. Malachi with an insult. Ohio and U of M tailgates don't have intermingling. Yeah, not as much. Not as much. Although I tailgated. I wasn't tailgating. The first time that I went to Columbus, I stayed right there at Ground Zero in a hotel, Holiday Inn, right across, pretty much, right where the band goes in. I guess that's the close end of the horseshoe, but there's a Holiday Inn, probably a quarter mile from the stadium there. And the night before, we got into a broadcast from the lobby, and you walk around, and you see all these dudes wearing old dudes with their hair slicked back with these T-shirts on and those like black glasses, and you look. And you're like, wow, that looks like Woody Hayes. And you're like, hey, there's another guy. Everybody looks like Woody Hayes. That's not Halloween. They all dress up in those white T-shirts and those Ohio State hats, and they wear those 1950-60 glasses, and they all look like Woody Hayes. I went out. I don't want to say I was kidnapped, but I was mingling the night before with a bunch of Ohio State fans, and they Ohio State fans, they sniff out the opponents. Like, guy came up to me and said, I don't know if he gave me a gold box or said, what do you think about the game? Whatever it was. And I just said, okay, I'm down here working for my first game. And he said, wait a second, what do you mean? Where are you from? And I said, Michigan. Ooh. Maybe I would give people a pointer or two if they were going down to Ohio State. You probably have heard, don't drive your own car, get a rental. If you're going to have a Michigan's license plate, don't go down there because, they will vandalize your car. That's all true. You'll get pulled over. I mean, all those horror stories you hear definitely can happen. Don't wear blue. And then if you're out the night before, don't admit that you've come from the north down to watch the first game. These guys didn't accost me or anything else, but they said, well, you're staying with us now. You will join us for the rest of the evening. And it wasn't even an invitation. It was basically, you are doing that. So ended up going to every bar on High Street that night. And at the end of the night, I don't know, 3:00 in the morning, these, this group of 10 Ohio State fans just moved on. But the next morning I woke up and it was kegs and eggs. They called it there at Ground Zero, the Ohio State fans. And there were no Michigan fans. It was just a sea of scarlet. So your point about the intermingling is right on. Jared has only one question. Michigan has on offense, how are we going to efficiently and effectively utilize the talent on the roster? Well, Jared, this goes into the category of a good problem to have. I think about it often myself. And I think that the struggle, I don't know if the struggle is real, but if there is a struggle, you have Michigan, who won the Big Ten last year, and they forged their identity of ground and pound. And Harbaugh was back to his roots, a fullback, and we're going to hand the ball off. And Bo is loving it. All of those kind of things. Last year, that was Michigan's identity. Well, this year, they still have they even have a better offensive line. But both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are excellent pass catchers. So you're going to throw the ball a lot to both of those guys. So you're not going to run the ball in theory as much as you did last year, just based on the running backs that you have. You want to get those guys the ball out in space. I mean, if you got Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler, are you pounding them between the tack? No. You play to your strengths and you get the guys the ball on the outside. And that's where, those guys, and for Donovan Edwards, maybe he can run the ball between the tackles, but what he has demonstrated, if he has one superpower in college football right now, it's getting the ball out of the backfield and or running routes as a running back out of the backfield. He's awesome. So just on that, they're going to throw the ball more. Then you look at the ridiculous amount of wide receivers. All the receivers are back last year, plus they get Ronnie Bell, plus they get Darius Clemens, who it sounds like is the most talented wide receiver on the roster, and he's a true freshman, and he showed that in the spring. So how do you keep all those guys happy? You got to throw them the ball a lot. You got to find a way. You got to take some deep shots to Roland Wilson, who can take the top off of a defense. Certainly got to give the ball a lot to Andrel Anthony. He's a playmaker. 93 yards against Michigan State. Zip right down the, throw it up, high point, touchdown. Kojo, same thing. I mean, right down the line, A.J. Henning is a Deebo Samuel 2.0. I get that. I think how they do it is that if they play to their strength, now you can say, well, that's not their identity. Harbaugh is going to just, ground and pound. Well, I mean, the idea is to win football games. I think the identity flips this year, and Michigan becomes a high octane, not pass first, not pass happy, because they still are going to want to control the ground game, all weather, all those kind of things. They're going to want to be able to do it all, but they're going to throw the ball a lot more. And besides Ohio State, I don't know how many more offenses that you're looking at in the country that are better than Michigan's on paper heading into the season. How many? I'll give you Ohio State, but who else? Who else? You got any? All right. So, Jared, I understand what you're talking about. Let's see Malachi's riled up. You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. That's from the captain, who, is getting some he's putting some entertaining feedback up, and you can read the feedback if I don't read all of it. Let's see. Lloyd says Michigan football is not scared of Michigan State. Wait, let me see. Michigan football not scary of Michigan State, Ohio State football. I'm not exactly sure what you were trying to say there, but we'll get back to some more feedback in a minute. So like I said, I like the approach by Michigan. I think that they have a better team this year, and the game is at home. And just like last year, I mean, here's the part, like you said, well, you can't lose 2 in a row to Mel Tucker. And you got a losing record then against Michigan State. You can't lose 3 in a row against Mel Tucker and then really having so I don't know, Michigan, it's a must win. We saw that last year, but I'm having a hard time thinking about Michigan losing that game and still having a successful season. But I think that they will be able to win that game. Okay, on to some news that broke just in the last 48 hours, 24 hours. Michigan was able to grab a 5-star late in the game, just at the transfer portal earlier this week. Got done with his classes at UT Martin and then was in the transfer portal. He wasn't there long. Michigan jumped in there because of the relationship that they have with a Michigan Biff Poggi, who is on the Michigan staff. And so they're able to get Anoma, who had been a couple different places, Bama, Houston, and the most recently UT Martin. But this is what I saw this morning when I was looking at it. Anoma is on the Michigan football roster. If you go to mgoblue.com, he is there as a grad student. And what's interesting is that I'm looking at UT Martin's profile on their website for Anoma, they have him at 6'6", 270, and Michigan has him as 6'5", 244. So he has dropped 26 pounds and he's shrunk an inch, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", whatever. I don't know who goes through there and gives the measurements and everything else. But if you notice, his name is also changed here as well. And from Eyabi to AB. Eyabi to AB. So now it's Eyabi Anoma, not the way that it was before. So how much Eyabi Anoma is going to be able to get onto the field at this late spot, I don't think that you should expect to see him to have his number in there. Yes, it does. Number 18. Is that what Quiddy Pay was? I don't think you expect Anomi to be the starter in the first game and to rack up a bunch of snaps, but the possibility they could play in the first game, even just 2 weeks. Yeah. You think about the trading deadline in the NFL. It happens where a defensive end or linebacker or whoever will go to a different team and, they get a week and they put them in. So, and in this case, you've got 2 weeks. If 2 weeks, if you're Anoma and the Michigan staff, to get him acclimated to the defense. And then also there's no rush. You get him, let's say you get his feet wet against Colorado State. You get him a little bit more time against Hawaii, get a little bit more time against Utah, give a little more time against Maryland. By the time Michigan is ready to play their first road game at Iowa, October 1st, everything that AB Anoma needs to know he should be good to go. Anoma should be good to go. That's where I am at, and that's what I have been able to determine over the last couple hours. He's a little light at 244. I don't know. I don't know if maybe he's going to play inside, and that's not too light. And I don't know. How much did Devin Bush weigh? Right around that. Maybe not as tall, but Look, when you're a supreme athlete, like when I'm sitting on here telling you that I put on 50, I put on a bad 50 over the last couple months. That's a bad 50. But taking off 26 when you're a supreme athlete can be a good thing, for speed. And if you want to move inside or, for whatever it is, and you want to put on 26 and it's muscle and it's lean, there's a good 26. This is the way to pay it. There's a good 26 and there's a bad 26. Who's worse, Michigan State fans or Ohio State fans? I think Ohio State fans. I think Michigan State fans, when you get online and you work with them and you're friends, you hear it all the time. Like, you can't get away from it. How many of our friends that you have, like, half of them seem like they went to Michigan State. So, that's the way it is for me. And so it never ends when it comes down to that. Where I don't, I'm trying to think, I've worked with a few people and I know a few people that are Ohio State fans, but for the most part, that's not happening. So it's just a different kind of intensity when it comes to the rivalry. But overall, the Ohio State fans are a bunch of Philistines. They are, it's as bad. Ne'er-do-well Buckeye fans. It is, they are nasty. They are filthy. And that just starts it. Antoine wondering how fast Anoma is. I don't know. He calls him a cult. I think that is spot on, Antoine. The Ohio State fans are a cult. Brando wants to know about the USC transfer Cam Good. Have you heard anything about him? I have not heard anything about Cam Good, but I did just watch a video today on UMich football on Twitter. They put videos once every other day, pictures up almost every day. And the video, the first player is this giant who explodes out of a stance and hits the sled. And at first I thought, oh, they got a picture of Kenneth Grant, the gigantic freshman. And it's like, no, that guy's wearing 99. 99, Cam Good. Cam Good is a giant. Wait till you take a look at, he's listed at a 6'2", 315. Oh, okay, that sounds gigantic. And maybe it's just the way they had the camera down there and the angle. He explodes out, punches that sled. It's like, man, watch out for this guy. The punters, who I like, indicates that the current average weight of edge players at Michigan, is 247 and a half. 263 for the rotational edge guys. Mark indicates that anything that they get out of Anoma is a plus. If the staff is comfortable that he has changed for the better, why not take a shot at him? Low risk, high reward, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, look, when you get all into it and you know all the different places that he went, and I don't know the exact reason for every stop on why he was out at Alabama or Houston or why he left UT Martin. I've seen some academic concerns. I have also, once you're at UT Martin and you have a chance where you can transfer with a one-time transfer rule and you're a 5-star and you're thinking about the NFL, that makes sense to me. Being able to jump up and go to a Power 5 school from UT Martin, who, previous to yesterday, I didn't even know really existed, let alone had a football team. So I get that. And I don't know, like, if there's, there's like 3 or 4 things you'd say, well, I wouldn't want to take a chance with a guy like that. And then there's another 3 or 4 things where you could say, hey, if you vet the guy, you got somebody vouching for him, he's a talent, you take a shot. And so is it a gamble? It's a gamble if it blows up. And then any of the situations that he was in, if you look back and say, well, they should have seen this coming, but I have not seen that. And so, you get a second chance, or in this case, I don't know, Houston was a second chance, UT Martin was a third, you get a third, fourth chance. You get it. It's like, last chance you. Now, there you go. Yeah, I'm in. Without knowing all of the particulars here, you are trying to win football games, and you're looking for talent. And if you feel like you get a good read on a guy and you want to take a chance, you take a chance on a player. And again, take a chance makes it sound like, there's, and I don't know. Again, I don't know all the situations. I'll leave that for the people that, that want to, exchange barbs or something else and get in there and talk about it like that. All right. First maiden voyage on Twitter Spaces. I'm enjoying it, talking a little Michigan football today. I just want to let everybody know that we are here live weekdays at 1:00 talking Michigan. Today we're talking Michigan and Michigan State and just how Michigan will deal with Michigan State this season. But we've got a few other things to get to as well, and that gets us to practice. And we have talked a little bit about practice. And there is a hype train regarding a guy that we've already talked about today. Andrel Anthony. Josh Henschke is the publisher of the Maize and Blue Review, and about every day he puts up a practice report. This is going on. This is what happened at the scrimmage. This is what he's hearing. Some days he just talks about recruiting and what people are telling him there, but most of the time here he has talked about practice. I didn't go through every practice report that Henschke has, but I went through a lot of them. He mentions whoever he's talking to, and he talks to different people. Like you say, oh, this source, this was a different one. You can kind of, glean different things. Everybody's mentioning Andrel Anthony as having a great camp. And, as I knew this information, that I'm watching the Michigan State game last night, and I see the 93-yard touchdown by Andrel Anthony. First catch is a Michigan Wolverine, 93-yard touchdown. I see the next catch. He's up there high pointing the ball with the defender in a pretty good position from J.J. McCarthy. Touchdown, Andrel Anthony. I see him almost get a hat trick in the third quarter. And then I'm reading Hetchke, this kid, So Andrel Anthony is having an outstanding fall camp. And I don't know if it comes as any surprise. Was it Ron Bellamy that was comparing him to Braylon Edwards? He's wearing the number 1. Braylon wore the number 1. I found it interesting as I watched. It was the second touchdown catch against Michigan State. As I was watching it last night, who said Braylon Edwards and used it as the comp? Joel Klatt. Looks a lot like Braylon Edwards. And he did. The funny part with Braylon is when I watched the spring game and I was watching and I was sitting down there in the stadium and I was watching number 0 as a wide receiver for Michigan, Darius Clemens. I looked and I said, man, this guy's got a build. Like, he's got a Big Ten build. Like, you're not going to have to worry about Darius Clemens. I don't know if he was as jacked as like DK Metcalf or something, but physically, like, he's got an NFL wide receiver build. He looked like a Monroe St. Brown. And then I watched him running, just some patterns, those little warm-up ones, and I'm like, he looks a lot like Braylon Edwards. So I think both Anthony and Darius Clemens, you can comp. There's nothing wrong on the field of running routes out there being compared to Braylon Edwards, one of the greatest Michigan wide receivers ever. I mean, Anthony Carter's the greatest, so you're going to have a hard time topping the original number 1. Practice, Ferris. Yeah, we are talking about practice. Bryant talking about cutting class and going to Burger King. Well, hey, if that's true, I was going to hate on a guy for going to BK. Maybe that's why you get in and you see the 26-pound loss, staying away from BK. T-Bird talking about more touchdowns this year, less field goals. Yeah, I'm always for, you got a good, Jake Moody's excellent and everything. I'm always for, let's just see how good his leg is on extra points. You don't need a lot of field goals. Towards the end of the half, fine. Extra points, swing them through, touchdowns. Right. I'm with you there. So do I have the breakdown of the field goals? Yeah, I don't. Antoine wants Andrel Anthony on drag routes all day. See if he can turn those 5-10s into touchdowns. Burner with good hands. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's see some yards after the catch. He's great at that. That's a little 15, 20-yarder that he had against MSU on his first ever catch, and he turned it into a 93-yard touchdown. Florida St. Braylon was the best. Yeah, he was great. Again, you can't top. You could try, but you can't top Anthony Carter. That's just kind of the way it goes. Steven, he's working. He's watching the show. He works, tell work at 1:00. You're watching Amazing Blue Review that you can get in. And, so sometimes work gets in there. Randall says, was it the MSU game where Corum dropped that swing pass for the go-ahead TD? It was in the first half that Corum dropped that touch. It was a first down. You could make a case. I mean, maybe he would have scored a touchdown, but it definitely would have been a first down. So, yeah, that was a drop. No doubt about that. Stephen indicating that being at the U of M MSU 3 overtime game was one of the best games he's ever seen. Yeah. Last year's game, it's difficult to say this. It's tough to say it's a great game. Like, if you're a Michigan fan, it's tough to say that last year's game was a great game. But I remember watching the game and tweeting out when it was, 30-30, I tweeted out something like, regardless of the outcome, this has been a great college football game. And it was up to that point. And watching it last night, and it looked like, Michigan came out, they got the early touchdown, and State was getting a little bit going with Kenneth Walker. And then they started getting a lot going with Kenneth Walker. But State went down to 4th and 1. They're throwing the ball and, getting 40 yards. And Michigan's defense is with their new defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, who totally rebounded, just like the team did after that game, and put together really good, effective game plans against, Penn State, where the defense came up huge, limiting the Nittany Lions only to 17 points. And, they hung in there against Ohio State. But McDonald put together one of the worst coordinations of a defense that I've ever seen. I mean, it was a disaster. If we're going to pat him on the back and everything else for winning the Big Ten, and he gets the ring and everything, he gets an F as a coordinator for that game. Michigan is unprepared for Michigan State, who's sitting on them, just sitting out there waiting for Michigan, to keep screwing up on their rotations, and it was terrible. It was one of the worst performances. I said that already, but it was a great game. But going back to the overtime game, that one was great. The thing that stands out to me in that game is that there are a couple of things. Stanton looked like a Heisman Trophy winner until they got knocked out of the game. State was killing Michigan in that game, where 25%, 30% of the Michigan crowd was heading for the exits early in that one. State was killing them. And there was a fire. The dusk, it was before they had the lights, and they had the temporary lights in there. There was some kind of fire out on the street. That was great. I think you also, and again, these are 2 losses, so you wouldn't point to these. The one that Brady and Henson, where Henson started the second half up in East Lansing, so that'd have been 99. That was a great game, 35-34. The other one, where the Spartan Bob game, where Spartan Bob had, he had a hard time pressing the button on the clock when he had that big foam finger on up in the press box, and Bobby Williams afterwards was like, no, we have no problems with the officials. Great job. But Larry Stevens getting tackled. The smoker to duck it with no time. That was a great game. That was one of the greatest. I don't know if you can rate tailgates. I went with a group of my friends. I had an RV, and we were down there as soon as you could get in there. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning in East Lansing. And I'd have to look and say, but I would say that game even could have been early November. It was an Indian summer. It's like 70 degrees. And when you get to one of those 70 degrees, when you get into November and you're in Michigan, it's like summertime again. And my friend had his younger brothers were up in East Lansing going to school. And then they brought a dozen girls with them to our tailgate, to our RV. I had a friend who was such a big football fan, such a big Michigan fan at that game. So we're talking about the 2001 game now. I think that was the Spartan Bob game. That he was having such a good time. The tailgate was going so good. There was such a great party. Everything was awesome that he gave his ticket away so he could stay at the tailgate. That's how good it was going. Now, I thought that was a stupid move by him. And I can remember leaving, going up into the press box about, an hour or 2 before the game, but just leaving a fever pitch of a tailgate, looking around like it doesn't get any better than this. And then coming back, it wasn't as fun with Duckett catching that touchdown. And like I told you before, I got, a lot of my friends are State fans, and they didn't win graciously in 2001. They're like up in my face, like grabbing me, grabbing my shirt, talking about, victory and others, all that kind of stuff. That was it. Okay. Antoine, maybe he's making an excuse for Mike McDonald. Let's see. Substitution rules versus the NFL are different. Wasn't used to it. And MSU took advantage of it. Yeah, but there's no excuse. Let's see. Do you see tweets while on Twitter Spaces, or is it direct messages only? Well, Paul, that is a good question. I'm looking over here. This is the screen that I have. So it's got the people that are listening on Twitter Spaces. Maybe I can just send that down and I can look. Yes, I can. Somebody is saying pronounce Eyabi Anoma. Well, how did I pronounce it? I think I had it right. Let me see. I'm going to go back for a second. I want to get this right. This is according to somebody. I listened to, I'd never done this before. I say, well, how do you pronounce Eyabi on the Michigan football roster? And Eyabi, that's what I said. Anoma. Yeah, I got it right. I'm going to give you a little like there. Oh, Josh Henske gave me a retweet on Twitter Spaces. Will Michigan football be on one of the TV channels every week this year with a new Big Ten deal? Big Ten deal. That is from Paul, who adds Go Blue. Paul, I'm not sure. And as I was talking about that new deal yesterday, I like CBS, and for football, I think it's going to be just fine. I think basketball, it might take a little bit getting used to with, not having ESPN, but I think, football is going to be fine. Peacock is NBC streaming service. And I know by having to jump through the hoops this year, watching some Tiger games where they wanted $5 for me to just watch one of the games. And I was like, yeah, as much as I want to watch the Tigers Blue Jays on this Friday and, early August, I'm not going to spend $5 Peacock for one freaking game to do it. Now, my thought was they would never relegate a Michigan game to Peacock, but then people say, what better way to get the exposure and the ratings and for people to sign up for Peacock by dumping a Michigan game onto Peacock? So I don't know. We just have to buckle up. If anybody wants to tell you, oh, that's never going to happen, I'm like, it could happen. Like, look what happened with baseball. Like the Tiger games, you pay through the teeth, for Bally or whatever else. And then what were the big games? Blue Jays and there's the Yankees. The Yankees, those were all streamed games. So they come up with some of the bigger games and they pop you and, try to make you, pay for some of that streaming. Now, it's not that inconvenient for me. I've got a smart TV upstairs. And so however it's streaming, it doesn't matter. It's just like it's, regular TV. Just like when it's YouTube on that smart TV. Now, but I got to go downstairs. It's different. I got to watch it on little, and it's hard to flip back. And it's hard. Now, during a Michigan game, I'm not flipping over to another game. I might during a commercial. Would I flip off of a Michigan game? Let's say third quarter, Michigan's up 40-3 on UConn in the third quarter. Would I flip off of CBS to check on, some of the other? I would. That's hard to do if you're streaming. You got to stop it here or push this button and grab another remote. Make it seamless, Peacock, or something like that. All right. There's people with other ideas. I don't know. Eyabi. What did I say? Eyabi is how it was said previous to now this new pronunciation that said AB. Now, we'll just see. Now, if you know him and you know how it's said, you can go with it. Don't worry, there's going to be a lot of commercials. All right, so there's Andrel Anthony. And what I want to get you here, and if you're somebody that's listening or watching for the first time, 98% of the time I'm talking about Michigan. 1% of the time I'll talk about some Lions or something going on with the Tigers or some other team or something sports-wise, golf maybe. And then 1% of the time I'll talk about something else like movies. And this summer, I am doing a top 10 TV series of all time. And I give you this countdown once in a while. So let's get to that. Starting at number 10, I had Sons of Anarchy. At number 9, I selected Dexter. Let's see. At number 8, Downton Abbey. 6 seasons, 52 episodes, 2 movies. I haven't seen the last movie from Downton, but it's ready to go on to cable here soon, so I'm ready to watch that. Fargo, the anthology format. No, I love Fargo. I haven't rewatched any of the Fargo, the 4 seasons, but I liked all of them. And, if you'd have told me before I watched Fargo and somebody said, what do you think of dark comedy? I'd say, I don't really know what dark comedy is. And then they would explain it to me and I'd say, I don't like dark comedy. I like kind of realistic things. But then I watched Fargo and they do dark comedy the way it's supposed to be done. Number 6, the companion series of Narcos. Doesn't get any better than that. I love gangster movies, and Boardwalk Empire is one of the best. I watched that for the first time about this time last year. Mad Men. When you get into the top 5, I don't need to say how much I like it. These are the greatest. I mean, these are the goats. Now, if you don't like smoking or drinking in every scene, then you won't like Mad Men. But if you don't mind that, John Hamm, it's one of the great characters of any TV show ever. Put him up there on Mount Rushmore with Fred Sanford and Alan Alda, Hawkeye. Those would be 3 of mine. I have to think about the 4th. Could come from this series. I waited on this because I wanted to see Better Call Saul conclude, and I won't give you any spoilers. You don't have to turn anything off if you have that saved up. I won't, talk about the ending or anything else, but you could argue that I should have these separated, but I would argue that these are joined at the hip, and you could call Better Call Saul a prequel, and you could call it Breaking Bad 2.0. If you watched it, you know all that. I mean, they're intermingled. Better Call Saul is 60% a prequel, and then 40% it takes place after the timeline of what's going on after Walter White dies. It's a big part of the show that they're able to go back and forth, and it's black and white in the future, and then you're back before Amazing by Gilligan, who I had never heard of before, the man who's responsible for Breaking Bad and BCS. I like the ending. Now, there's some nitpicky things that, like, if I would have been able to sit through it, I think everybody does that. Like, I don't know, maybe that was a little cheesy, maybe this one, but great TV, obviously. And there they are, number 3. And so I only have 2 left remaining, and we'll see if I can get those up there before the season. Yeah, Florida, I'm ready for that. Malachi saying The Walking Dead is up there. When you only have 10, Malachi, you should try this exercise yourself. I put Walking Dead in consideration in the top 10, but I went with Dexter overall in the what would you say, horror genre. I would also put, what's the other one that's really scary? That's an anthology series. It is pretty scary. I probably should have put that one up here as well. But Walking Dead is great. I take Dexter over it. And the one thing I would say in defense of Walking Dead is that I watched it, and then at some point I got screwed up on where it was on Netflix, and then I think I got I skipped a season, so then I was confused, and then I went back, and then I got lost, and then I don't know if I've watched the last 4 or 5 seasons. And then when I tried to go back, I couldn't find my starting point again, which kind of screwed me up. So I haven't been able to take the entire thing in and be able to digest it and be able to tell you whether or not, it should be in the 10. I can tell you that Dexter, the new blood that came out like they did the 8 seasons, and then it like kind of ended. And then they waited, what was it, 3-4 years, and now they've have this new one that's out. The new one's as good as the old ones. And in fact, I will say that it's better. Otis got a half dozen for the opener. Let's go, Otis. Let's go. What are you doing with those half dozen tickets? All right, one more on the feedback. These miniseries on streaming networks are better than the movies. These movies are terrible with the woke stuff. They're killing the classic movies. I don't know. I didn't get to the miniseries. There's a lot of things that only go like a season or 2 or a couple hours. I think of The Night Of. That's on HBO. I mean, that's as good as it gets. And I think that's only, what's that, like 3 or 4? I like both of the war movies of the one is the Pacific, and those are great. But those are more of the longer ones that I put in. Those are my top 10. I'll give you those final 2 before the season goes. So as far as Clubhouse goes, which I have been on the entire time, I kind of like Twitter here. I see more people. Paul is saying that Matt Berry has moved to Peacock, the great fantasy guru, Matt Berry. And then I am getting those mentions right in there. Now that is pretty good. I like it. And then I can look, Twitter Spaces seems to be going pretty well. Remember this, you want to know what's going on in practice every day? You should join up in the Maize and Blue Review. Josh Henschke, the team, we bring these guys on here oftentimes to talk about what's going on right up until the minute. Projections, who's coming, who's going, who's committing, how they fit in. You want to know all those different things about, the latest 5-star that they're bringing in, where he fits in, what everybody's saying about him, track record, all those kind of things. It's all there. I just scratched the surface here on Michigan Football Today. And then when basketball starts, it's oftentimes Michigan Football and Basketball Today, and then other sports as well. But I'm ready to dive into this weekend. I'm excited about it. This is true. I didn't think about saying this, Ferris, before I ended, but this weekend will be the final weekend for months without football involved. That is pretty exciting. And I know, going back to school can be a little bit nervous. We've got that going on in my household, around here, a little nerve-wracking. But the fall, and it's getting a little chillier. We all say that because it's true. But we also have football that is right around the bend. And if I give one more shout out, I could say that if you did not know that during the football season, after every Michigan football game, I watch the game and then I turn on the button here and then I start talking about the game after the game. The Maize and Blue Review post-game show we will be on. And it's not just football. After every Michigan basketball game, we are live. Every game. It doesn't matter if I could see it. They played that exhibition against Ferris. Hopefully that's on TV. Maybe I'll have to go down to the Chrysler Center, figure it out. I'll be there. So we'll be here Monday, ready to crank it up again. Thanks for everybody listening on Twitter Spaces. That'll do it. I'm going to end it there. This will end my conversation. Yes, it will. And it will end it with you. I'll leave you with what Nick Harbor had to say.
With Michigan, another one of the big schools in your recruitment, how are things going between you and the Wolverines at this point?
Things are going great. We're having talks to set up the official visit. So, that date should be coming out sooner or later too. So that's really it. Talks have been going really well. Just seeing how they're gonna do the season.
All right, so that was Nick Harbor, and you can watch an entire interview on Maize and Blue Review. But Harbor is a 5-star do-it-all that Michigan, of course, wants He's a defensive end, outside linebacker, athlete out of D.C., Washington, D.C. He ranks top 10 as a recruit nationally. He ran the 100 meters in 10.22 at 6'5", 220. This is somebody that the Michigan and everybody else in the country wants, but it doesn't sound like he's making a decision anytime soon. Listening to that whole interview, he's setting up official visits, and he wanted to see. He made a point. He wanted to see, hey, can Brian Kelly get LSU back and into the picture? You know, what's going on with Lincoln Riley out in California? Are they going to hit the ground running? Is Michigan going to get back and, you know, defend their Big Ten title? These are important things as it was laid out there by Nick Harbor. So Michigan's in. And whether you want to say they're in his final three, or, you know, he's got Maryland in there, he's got South Carolina. So he talked about a lot of those different schools. So he's got but Michigan's in the final five, maybe the final three, maybe the final two, depending on, you know, how you want to look at it and how you are hoping that it goes. If you can do such things right now when there's such a long time to go in his recruitment. But Michigan's in with a chance. That's all you can ask for right now. And hey, you know, go out and win the Big Ten again. You maybe get a guy like Nick Harbor to come in and say, I want to be a part of this as a defensive end. You know what I'm talking about? Dennis, I want a hail to the victors played when you start talking about wins. Yeah, I think, Antoine, we could probably get something going like that. Do I have, what kind of music do I have? Oh, no, that's the, no. It's the open. Let's just say I don't have the victors.
I jump on.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Have a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.